Ladies and gentlemen, you are tuned to Community Radio Networks. We are live here right now on this beautiful Tuesday morning, the day after the eclipse. It is the 9th of April today. Wishing you all a lovely Tuesday. Let's get you all the information for you to take on the day. We'll start with the world news. This is Community Radio Networks, the world news, read by Shabnam Madgil. Israel and Hamas both dampened hopes of a speedy breakthrough in Cairo talks towards a Gaza truce and hostage release deal after Egyptian state-linked media had reported some progress. But as the Gaza war has raged on into a seventh month, Israel is under growing international pressure to agree to a ceasefire, including from its top ally and arms supplier, the United States. And Hamas said it was considering a new framework for a truce proposed during the latest round of negotiations in Cairo as Palestinians returning to southern Gaza confronted the extent of destruction left after Israeli troops withdrawal. Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu has said an undisclosed date for a ground invasion of the southern Gaza city of Rafah has been set, while the Hamas militant group considered the latest proposal for a ceasefire and hostage release talks. It is the White House saying that Hamas bears the responsibility for deciding on the ceasefire in Gaza with Israel after negotiators presented a proposal to the group. Israel's ambassador to the United Nations spoke out forcefully against the notion of Palestinian statehood during a UN Security Council meeting, going so far as to suggest that the UN had backtracked on its original goal of preventing the spread of Nazi ideology by supporting Palestinian statehood. While speaking in the General Assembly yesterday, it was the photo of Hajj Amin al-Husseini, the Grand Mufti of Jerusalem, was speaking with German Chancellor Adolf Hitler. Israeli warplanes have struck a Syrian military position overnight in response to rocket fire on the Israel-occupied Golan Heights. And the cross-border fire came days after an airstrike blamed on Israel destroyed the Iranian consulate in Damascus, killing senior military commanders and raising regional tensions. Turkey will impose trade restrictions on Israel starting today on a range of products, including the cement and steel and iron construction materials, in response to Israel's offensive on Gaza. And Nicaragua has asked the UN's highest court to hold German weapon sales to Israel at the start of a landmark case. Germany is accused of breaching the UN Genocide Convention by sending military hardware to Israel and seizing funding of the UN's aid agency. Berlin, of course, rejects the claims and will present a defense to the International Court of Justice today. Pope Francis met yesterday with relatives of hostages taken by Hamas on the 7th of October, marking the 6-month anniversary of the attack in southern Israel after an hour-long audience. The Vatican released photos of this encounter showing relatives of several of the hostages sitting in a semicircle in front of Francis in his private library at the Apostolic Palace, and each one held a poster with a photo and the name of a loved one. It was the second time that Pope Francis has met with relatives of the hostages. The Vatican has reaffirmed its opposition to gender-affirming surgery, gender theory, and surrogate parenthood, drawing criticism from advocates for LGBTQ Catholics. The declaration by the Vatican's doctrinal office comes 4 months after another document in which it supported blessings for same-sex couples, triggering fierce conservative pushback, especially in Africa. Colonization, bloodshed, war crimes, occupation, controversial military bases, these are all issues intertwined in the collective history of the United States, Japan, and the Philippines. But when the leaders of the three countries sit down at the White House this week, a key topic will be a much more present-day worry that binds their relationship and that common concern over China. British Foreign Secretary David Cameron is in Washington today to press senior Republicans to unlock money for Ukraine after meeting a skeptical Donald Trump in Florida. And President Biden is seeking to revive interest in a plan to build the first high-speed rail in the U.S. using Japanese bullet trains, with sources saying he's likely to discuss the project with Japan's Prime Minister in Washington this week. The leaders may publicly voice support for this multi-billion-dollar Texas project after talks which have been partly overshadowed by U.S. opposition to another Japanese investment, Nippon Steel's planned purchase of U.S. steel. Former President Trump has officially taken a stance on the issue of abortion after months of speculation and comments about abortion bans in place in more conservative states. In a video posted to Truth Social, he once again boasted about the role he played in ending Roe v. Wade through his selection of 3 conservative Supreme Court justices. But while his opponents are campaigning that he'll seek a federal ban once in office, as a chunk of his supporters would like, the former president said he will not endorse any kind of federal abortion legislation. He said that abortion rights should be left to the states, offering his clearest stance yet on one of the most delicate and contentious issues in American politics. And a state appeals court judge denied Donald Trump's bid for an emergency delay of his impending criminal trial in New York. He's close to running out of time in his last-ditch bid to stave off the historic stigma of being the first former president to go on criminal trial next week. Special counsel Jack Smith's team is urging the Supreme Court to reject former President Trump's claim that he's immune from prosecution in a case charging him with scheming to overturn the results of the 2020 presidential election. Another round of severe weather is slamming parts of the southern Mississippi Valley today, less than a week after a powerful storm system that swept through the region killed at least 3 people. Heavy rain, strong winds, and dangerous thunderstorms began yesterday in an area from Texas to Alabama, and continuing storms are forecast to unleash a trifecta of dangers today and tomorrow, threatening tens of millions of Americans across the south and lower Mississippi Valley with more rain, large hail, and the potential for strong tornadoes. More than 30 million people from Texas to western Mississippi are at risk of severe storms today, and about 9 million of those people in parts of eastern Texas and western Louisiana had an enhanced or level 3 of 5 risk of severe weather, and that includes Houston and Austin. Louisiana's Republican-controlled Senate advanced a bill that would empower state and local law enforcement to arrest and jail people in the state who entered the U.S. illegally, similar to embattled legislation in Texas. Mexico severed diplomatic ties with Ecuador, a decision that came after Ecuadorian authorities forcibly entered the Mexican embassy to arrest former Ecuadorian Vice President Jorge Glass on corruption charges. He had served as vice president from 2013 to 17 and was jailed after a court found him guilty of receiving more than $13 million in bribes. 27 people went on trial in connection with the Panama Papers tax evasion scandal, with one of the main defendants denying accusations of money laundering. That 2016 leaks that revealed how many of the world's wealthy stashed assets in offshore companies, exposing high-profile personalities and triggering scores of investigations around the globe. Researchers searched off the northern coast of Mozambique after a makeshift ferry boat carrying people fleeing a cholera outbreak capsized, killing at least 97. With about 130 people on board, the boat ran into trouble yesterday as it headed for an island of Nampula province. And 51 passengers were rescued after the bus they were traveling in was swept away by floodwaters on a river bridge in northern Kenya. We have the European Union voting on tomorrow on a vast overhaul of its immigration policies that would notably harden entry procedures for asylum seekers and require all the bloc's countries to share responsibility. The number of new asylum applications in Germany has dropped significantly in the first quarter of this year compared to the same period last year. And Spain's government has said it plans to scrap so-called golden visas that allow wealthy people from outside the European Union to obtain residency permits on investing more than €500,000 in real estate. And Socialist Prime Minister Pedro Sanchez said his minority coalition government would study the reform in the weekly cabinet meeting today. An international court in France ruled Switzerland's failure to adequately tackle the climate crisis was in violation of human rights in a landmark climate judgment that could have a ripple effect across the globe. The European Court of Human Rights in Strasbourg, France, delivered its ruling in a case brought by more than 2,000 Swiss women, the majority of whom are in their 70s, against Switzerland's government. They argued that the climate change-fueled heat waves undermine their health and quality of life and put them at risk of dying. A French water charity has sounded the alarm today about pollution in the Seine just over 100 days before the start of the Olympics, when the river is said to be used for swimming events. It is expected to host the opening ceremony and will then be used for the marathon swimming events and the triathlon, pollution permitting. Italian firm Mondo will supply this summer's Paris Olympics with a custom purple track, which could be the fastest yet for the athletes hunting the biggest prizes in sports. Based in the sleepy Piedmontana of Alba, which is immersed in vineyards where the grapes of the world-famous Barolo wine ripen in the sun, Mondo first made the track for the 1976 Montreal Olympics. Serbia is close to signing a deal on the purchase of 12 French Rafale multi-purpose fighter jets. This was announced by the Serbian president in Belgrade in what would mark a shift from its traditional military supplier, Russia. The president spoke during his two-day visit to Paris and talks with French President Emmanuel Macron, as well as French defense officials, including Rafale manufacturers Dassault Aviation. Russia, meanwhile, has reportedly asked Kazakhstan to supply it with petrol as Ukrainian attacks on its refineries force it to import gasoline. Kazakhstan has been asked to set up a reserve of 100,000 tons of gasoline. And a barrage of Russian drone attacks have caused damage in the southern Ukrainian regions of Odessa and Mykolaiv. Ukraine, meanwhile, maximizing its efforts to thwart Russia's plans against Kharkiv, said President Zelensky, as its military draws up plans to boost protection for the northeastern city they believe could be the target of a new offensive. China's top diplomat said this morning that Beijing would strengthen strategic cooperation with Moscow and that the two must stand on the side of fairness and justice as he met his Russian counterpart, Sergei Lavrov, who arrived in China for a two-day official visit, with the two countries looking to deepen diplomatic ties as Russia's war in Ukraine grinds on. Ladies and gentlemen, you're listening to the World News on Community Radio Networks. A recent poll has highlighted a significant shift in the geopolitical landscape of the Middle East and North Africa, revealing that Russia and China are increasingly surpassing the U.S. in terms of influence within the region. And the survey conducted by AI Monitor in collaboration with the Premise engaged 2,670 participants across Egypt, Turkey, Iraq, and Tunisia, and to gauge their perceptions on global power dynamics, and the findings indicate a clear preference for Russian President Putin and Chinese President Xi Jinping over President Biden among the respondents. A top Chinese leader will lead a delegation to North Korea this week in what would be the highest level meeting between the two countries since the pandemic began. The Vatican's top diplomat began a 6-day visit to Vietnam today as part of ongoing efforts to normalize relations between the two sides. He will meet with his Vietnamese counterpart and visit a children's hospital in the capital of Hanoi. A 26-year-old Indonesian man was sentenced to 18 months in prison and 9 strokes of the cane in Singapore for illegally entering the island nation by swimming. Singaporeans have identified the man by only one name, Brick, and reported that he approached Singapore on a small boat called a sampan last year. Myanmar's military has begun basic training at military bases and schools across the country for draftees called up under the country's recently activated conscription law. And Novak Djokovic, age 36, and Rohan Bopanna, age 44, are rewriting the narrative of age in tennis, showcasing that age is merely a number as they clinch top spots in the ATP rankings history for singles and doubles. In a remarkable feat, Djokovic surpassed Roger Federer Sunday to become the oldest world number one in ATP rankings history, while Rohan Bopanna currently leads the ATP doubles rankings. Chaitra Navaratri marks the beginning of the Hindu luni-solar calendar. This year the festival is commencing today and will conclude on the 17th of April. 9 days of Navaratri dedicating to paying homage to the 9 manifestations of the goddess Shakti. And the event also signifies a commencement of the Hindu New Year according to this calendar. In Maharashtra it is celebrated as Gudi Padwa, while Kashmiri Hindus observe it as Navre. Prime Minister Modi extended his greetings on various festivals including Navaratri, Ugadi, Cheti Chand, Sajibu Cheroba, Navre and Gudi Padwa, which are celebrated across different regions of the country to commemorate the traditional New Year. And we do have the Delhi High Court rejecting Arvind Kejriwal's plea against arrest in the Delhi excise policy case and said the case is valid. The court also said that the material collected by the Enforcement Directorate revealed that he conspired with others and was involved in his personal capacity as well as convener of the Aam Aadmi Party. The court also rejected his objections to the Enforcement Directorate using approver's statement against him and said granting pardon to approver is not under their domain as it is a judicial process. Prime Minister Modi today attacked the opposition parties for opposing the Citizenship Amendment Act and described it as politics of appeasement, taking a swipe at the Congress and Samajwadi Party over opposition to CAA. He said if India will not give citizenship to the persecuted minorities from neighboring countries, then who will? The BJP has used the Kashmiri Pandit community's pain and suffering as a weapon to garner votes across the country, according to People's Democratic Party Chief Mehbooba Mufti. The People's Democratic Party president was speaking after visiting the residence of Roshan Lal, a Kashmiri Pandit and a photojournalist who died last month in the city's Abiguzar area. Opposition Mahavikas Aghadi today announced seat-sharing deal in Maharashtra for the upcoming Lok Sabha elections. Uddhav Thackeray-led Shiv Sena will contest on 21 seats, Congress 17, and Sharad Pawar-led NCP on 10. Congress veteran A.K. Antony today made a surprising statement regarding his son Anil Antony, who is contesting as the BJP candidate for a Lok Sabha seat in Kerala. Addressing that press conference, he said that his son's party should lose and his rival Congress candidate in South Kerala constituency, Anto Antony, should win. A new health report has given a new title to the state of the deadly disease of cancer prevalent in India. A study by the Apollo hospitals indicating a decline in the overall health of Indians. And this report that was released on World Health Day on the 7th of this month revealed that 14 lakh people in India had cancer in 2020, and the number is expected to rise to 15.7 by 2025. And while cancer of the breast, the cervix, and ovarian cancer is the most prevalent type in women, in men the common types of cancer are lung, mouth, and prostate. An inconsistent Punjab Kings will hope to come out with an attacking display to match the ultra-aggressive approacher of Sunrise Hyderabad as the two teams clash in a mid-table battle in the IPL today. And the Pakistan Cricket Board today announced the 17-member squad for the upcoming T20I series against New Zealand. The 5-match series will be played in Rawalpindi and Lahore from the 18th to the 27th of this month. And fast bowler Mohammad Amir and left-arm spinner Imad Wasim, having reversed their decisions to retire from international cricket, have been included in this 17-member Pakistan squad for the upcoming 5-match series against New Zealand. And the series, spanning over 10 days, will comprise 3 matches in Rawalpindi and 2 in Lahore. Former Pakistan all-rounder Azhar Mahmood will be the national side's head coach for the upcoming 5-match international series against New Zealand. And as multiple countries across the world decide to celebrate Eid tomorrow after the crescent was not sighted yesterday, the Central Ruwet-e-Hilal Committee will meet in Islamabad today to spot the Shawwal crescent, giving rise to the possibility of a same-day Eid across the Muslim world. In addition to Saudi Arabia, Qatar, and the United Arab Emirates, Bahrain and Kuwait will celebrate Eid tomorrow. So getting everyone ready for the celebration tomorrow. And we do have today as the last day of the month of Ramzan. Pakistani authorities have deployed more than 100,000 police and paramilitary forces at mosques and marketplaces across the country ahead of the massive Eid holiday. Pakistan urging the UN Security Council to take appropriate steps to ensure the implementation of its resolution that called for the enforcement of a ceasefire. And former Prime Minister Yusuf Raza Gilani and PMLN's Sayyid Khan Nasir today were elected unopposed as the Senate chairman and deputy chairman, respectively. The federal government in Islamabad informed the Supreme Court that 20 people who were arrested and jailed for their involvement in the May 9th violence have been released so that they could celebrate Eid with their family after they served major part of their sentence, while the remaining period of their punishment was remitted by Chief of the Army Staff. Ladies and gentlemen, that's all I have in the world news for you. I do have your financial news coming up in a separate segment. Just give me 1 minute more and we'll get that to you. Stay with us right here on Community Radio Networks. Let's get you all the financial news that you need to know about today. And today is Tuesday, the 9th of April. Let's start with the foreign currency exchange rates. We have the Indian rupee at 83.19, Pakistani rupee 277.91, Bangladeshi taka at 109.86, the Sri Lankan rupee at 298.64, Nepalese rupee 133.16, the British pound at 0.79, the euro at 0.92, Canadian dollar 1.36, the Australian dollar 1.51, Mexican peso 16.34, Chinese yuan 7.23, Japanese yen 151.76, Russian ruble 91.86, the Thai baht at 36.34, and the Turkish lira at 32.23. U.S. stocks stuck in a holding pattern this morning as investors bided their time until a key inflation report lands and potentially sheds light on the path of interest rates. Futures tied to the Dow Jones Industrial Average and the S&P 500 and the tech-heavy Nasdaq 100 all trading just above the flat line. It is stocks that have become marooned ahead of the release of the Consumer Price Index tomorrow, seen as a pivotal point for a market facing a slower next leg higher after a strong first quarter. The U.S. experienced a significant drop in energy production as yesterday's solar eclipse blocked sunlight to solar panels across the country. The U.S. Energy Information Administration reported that solar energy generators, which provide a combined 84.8 gigawatts of energy, faced partial or total obstruction from the eclipse. Gold extended its bull run to a fresh record ahead of the next set of U.S. inflation data tomorrow that could provide insight into the Federal Reserve's next steps. The bullion has jumped as much as 1.1% to $2,365.35 an ounce after closing 0.4% higher yesterday. The laws governing artificial intelligence are increasingly different depending on where you are in the U.S., a mounting source of confusion for businesses racing to capitalize on the rise of AI. This year in Utah, state lawmakers are debating legislation requiring certain businesses to disclose if their products interact with consumers without using a human. And there are among the 30 states, plus the District of Columbia, that have either proposed or have adopted new laws placing constraints, either directly or indirectly, on how AI systems are designed and used. President Biden's second attempt at student loan forgiveness is taking a key step forward. Yesterday, the White House and the Education Department released details of the administration's plan to cancel student debt for millions of borrowers after the Supreme Court struck down its first attempt in June of last year. A person with a ticket matching all 6 Powerball numbers in last weekend's $1.3 million jackpot has come forward to claim the prize, purchased at a Plaid Pantry convenience store in the northeastern part of the city of Oregon, in a city in Oregon. The global airline industry is facing a summer squeeze. The travel demand expected to surpass pre-pandemic levels, while aircraft deliveries have dropped sharply due to production problem at Boeing and Airbus. Air carriers are spending billions in repairs and keeping flying older, less fuel-efficient jets and paying a premium to secure aircrafts from lessors. Boeing company likely didn't deliver any 777 freighters during the first quarter, adding to its cash woes at a time when 737 MAX handovers are sluggish amid heightened government scrutiny. Tesla has cancelled the long-promised inexpensive car that investors have been counting on to drive its growth into a mass-market automaker. And the automaker will continue developing self-driving robotaxis on the same small vehicle platform. Tesla has settled a lawsuit over a 2018 car crash that killed an Apple engineer after his Model X operating on autopilot swerved off a highway near San Francisco. And that settlement was made on the eve of the trial over the high-profile accident involving Tesla's driver-assistant technology. Jamie Dimon, the CEO of JP Morgan, has issued a cautionary message in his annual letter to shareholders, expressing deep concern over global geopolitical tensions and the overly optimistic view of investors on economic threats. Released yesterday, that letter warns that we may be entering one of the most precarious geopolitical times since World War II. Google revealed the details this morning of a new version of its data center artificial intelligence chips and announced an ARM-based base central processor. By the end of the year, Google plans to profoundly reshape the digital advertising world in a move designed to safeguard the privacy of web users. Google will end the use of third-party cookies on its Chrome browser, doing away with one of the commercial web's foundational technologies. L'Occitane International SA's billionaire owner Reynolds Geiger is nearing a deal to take the skincare company private with funding help from Blackstone, potentially ending its 14-year run on Hong Kong Stock Exchange. The world's largest alternative asset manager may provide debt financing for the buyout, and an announcement may come as soon as in these coming days. Trading of L'Occitane was suspended in Hong Kong this morning, pending announcement related to takeover costs, and the stock closed at 29 Hong Kong dollars yesterday. 99 cents only stores LLC has filed for bankruptcy after announcing plans this month to wind down its business operations. The California-based discount retailer listed assets of $1 billion to $10 billion and liabilities of a similar range in a Chapter 11 petition filed in Delaware. Filing Chapter 11 will give 99 cents only time to conduct going out of business sales at its roughly 370 locations. The Food and Drug Administration has announced the recall of 40 lots of hand sanitizer and aloe gel that contain methanol and could put consumers at risk for serious health issues. 40 lots of Aruba aloe hand sanitizer gel alcohol 80% and Aruba aloe alcoholada gel have been recalled for containing alcohol denatured with methanol. While they are often marketed as a healthier option to cigarettes, a new study has found that people who use vapes are at a higher risk of heart failure compared to those who have never used e-cigarettes. And this study was published by the American College of Cardiology and found that those who had used e-cigarettes were 19% more likely to develop heart failure in their life. Beyoncé's Cowboy Carter gallops in at number 1 on the Billboard 200 albums chart, debuting with 407,000 equivalent album units earned in the U.S. in the week that ended on the 4th of this month. It's the superstar's 8th number 1 on the all-genre Billboard 200. Various industries are poised to benefit from the millions of tourists that flock to cities in Texas, Ohio, and New York, and on the eclipse's path of a totality. And people who miss this one will not be, of course, able to see another one until 2044. Up to 3.7 million people traveled to the path of the eclipse, joining the 31 million people already living along that stretch. Another day, another H-E-B opening in North Texas. This one in far north Fort Worth today. Today, hold the ribbon cutting for the new H-E-B store on Heritage Trace Parkway. The Alliance store is the 5th H-E-B location to open in DFW and the 1st in Tarrant County. Previously, H-E-B's in Frisco, Plano, McKinney, and Allen in Collin and Denton counties, and a store currently under construction in Mansfield, expected to open sometime this summer, will be the 2nd Tarrant County location after today's. Fort Worth store will open officially to the public tomorrow. Last week, the company broke ground on a new store in Prosper. One of the most coveted comic books of all time is just sold in Dallas for millions of dollars. Action Comics number 1 sold in Dallas at Heritage Auctions for a record-breaking $6 million. The sale toppled the sale of Superman number 1 back in 2022, which sold for a reported $5.3 million. And we will also like you to know, how much did this same issue sell for when it first hit the shelves back in 1938? 10 cents. Talk about appreciation. Mexico's billionaires were finally going to get their comeuppance. They were nothing more than a mafia. And as said Andres Manuel Lopez Obrador told raucous crowds again and again at campaign rallies, and he was going to bring them to heel just as soon as he set foot in the presidential palace. Today, the billionaires are richer than ever. In fact, they've done so well since Lopez Obrador took office in late 2018 that the wealth of the 5 richest of them has soared twice as much as it did for the rest of the Latin Americans in the Bloomberg Billionaires Index. Carlos Slim and German Larrea, Mexico's richest 2 people, have seen their fortunes more than double. 27 people went on trial yesterday in connection with the Panama Papers tax evasion scandal, with one of the main defendants denying accusations of money laundering. The 2016 leaks revealed how many of the world's wealthy stashed assets in offshore companies, exposing high-profile personalities and triggering scores of investigations around the globe. HSBC is selling its business in Argentina and booking a $1 billion loss on the deal as it continues to shrink its once global spanning empire to focus on Asia. In an internal email, it is President Sarah Bond who has revealed that Microsoft is moving full speed ahead on its next-generation Xbox console, emphasized the company is focused on delivering the biggest technological leap ever in a generation with the upcoming hardware. Microsoft Corporation will invest about $2.9 billion over the next 2 years to boost its AI business in Japan. U.S. Senate Republican leader Mitch McConnell called for legislation to force TikTok's parent company, China's ByteDance, to divest the short video app used by 170 million Americans. He called TikTok America's greatest strategic rival, threatening our security right here on U.S. soil in tens of millions of American homes. The economy of Germany maintains a significant reliance on China for various products and raw material, despite endeavors to broaden its market reach. And Eurozone bond yields dipped today to stand a touch below the previous day's 3-week high, with attention firmly fixed on U.S. inflation data and a European Central Bank meeting due later in the week. Russia dominated India's oil imports in 2023 and 24, despite decreasing discounts on oil and sanctions from G7 nations for its actions in Ukraine. Russia oil now accounts for 35% of India's total imports, up from 23% the previous year. And meanwhile, other major suppliers like Iraq, Saudi Arabia, the UAE, and the US have seen a decrease in their market share. BSE, Sensex and the Nifty 50, the Indian stock markets, trading in the red this afternoon after hitting lifetime highs earlier in the day. Gold prices reached a new all-time high of 71,150 rupees per 10 grams. And India's local manufacturing of electronics is expanding every year, with a significant decrease in imports of key components such as mechanics, vibrator motors, charger adapters, and plastic parts. The imports of fully assembled electronics like smartphones have dropped by 40%. And the bulls continue to dominate the trade floor today as shares of the Pakistan Stock Exchange urged by more than 600 points on optimism over investment from Saudi Arabia. The quantum of remittances increased to almost $3 billion in March, taking it to the highest level since April of 2022, primarily due to Ramzan. Internet services were disrupted in parts of Pakistan today, and consumers will pay ₹4.92 per unit extra next month for electricity consumed in February. The state-run oil and gas development company announced to have discovered tight gas at its exploratory well Noor West 01, situated in the Sujwal district of Sindh. And as exporters sought a 15-day extension, Commerce Minister Jam Kamal Khan has said that the ban on onion exports was only for Ramzan till the 15th of this month. Engineering Development Board has issued 34 licenses to manufacturers of 2- and 3-wheelers under the electric vehicles policy for 2020 to 2025 as part of the transition from traditional fuel-powered automobiles to EVs. And a meeting of the Reforms Committee set up by the Balochistan government to improve governance has decided to introduce artificial intelligence technology to resolve the issue of ghost and absent government employees, including teachers and doctors. Ladies and gentlemen, that's all I have in the financial news, and we will very soon get you your final segment of today's program coming up. Stay with us right here on Community Radio Networks. Before I get to the final segment of our program here today, I have huge thanks going out to those that support and make community radio networks possible. I have big thanks going out to Discount Power, as well as to Houston EB5, the Aluwalia Law Offices, the Wyndham Hotel in Irving, Digital X-Force, Kinzer Law, My Kolachi, Ruchi Palace, Sri Vimal, Vimal's Venue, Mystic Mandala, and Flash Brush Productions. Big thanks going out to them for making community radio networks possible. And of course, we have all this information that we have been getting to you for today. But let's go through some stories from the annals of history that happened on today's date. On the 9th of April in 1859, a 23-year-old Missouri youth named Samuel Langone Clemens received a steamboat pilot's license. Signed on as a pilot's apprentice while on his way to Mississippi, he had been commissioned to write a series of comic travel letters for a daily post. But after writing 5, he decided he'd rather be a pilot than a writer. He piloted his own boats for 2 years until the Civil War halted steamboat traffic, and during his time as a pilot, he picked up the term Mark Twain, a boatman's call noting that the river was only 2 fathoms deep, the minimum depth for safe navigation. And when he returned to writing, working for the Virginia City Territorial Enterprise, he wrote a humorous travel letter signed by Mark Twain and continued to use that pseudonym for nearly 50 years. You all didn't know his real name, but it was Mark Twain that he is most famously known as. Of course, you've read all his books, and you know how great a writer he was. He and his family moved to Italy in 1903, where his wife died, and her death left him sad and bitter, and his work, while still humorous, grew distinctively darker, and he died in 1910. It was he established the Hannibal Journal, and then in San Francisco, where he traveled the world writing accounts for papers in California and New York, and later published as a popular book called The Innocents Abroad. And it is, of course, his most famous novel, Tom Sawyer, that was published, followed by Life on the Mississippi and his masterpiece, Huckleberry Finn. And that, of course, all happened on the 9th of April in 1859. In Virginia, Robert E. Lee surrenders his 28,000 Confederate troops to Union General Ulysses Grant, effectively ending the American Civil War on today's date in 1865. Forced to abandon the Confederate capital of Richmond, blocked from joining the surviving Confederate force in North Carolina, and harassed constantly by Union cavalry, he had no other option but to surrender, and that ended the American Civil War on today's date in 1865. And exactly 1 year after his surrender, and decades before police officers would be pulling over speeding cars, the National Intelligence reports that Ulysses Grant, the Lieutenant General of the U.S. Army, had been pulled over for speeding in his horse buggy in Washington, D.C. 2 police officers detained him where he was exercising his fast gray nag and offered to pay the fine, but expressed his doubts of their authority to arrest him and drove off. His defiance, though, later subsided. He acknowledged the warrant, appeared before the Justice of Peace, and did pay the fine. It happened exactly a year after that. After a one-day trial, it was Billy the Kid who was found guilty of murdering the Lincoln County, New Mexico sheriff and is sentenced to hang on the 9th of April in 1881. No doubt that Billy the Kid did indeed shoot the sheriff, though he had done so in context of the bloody Lincoln County War, a battle between 2 powerful groups of ranchers and businessmen fighting for economic control of Lincoln County. And when his boss, the rancher, was murdered before his eyes, the hot-headed young Billy swore vengeance. Unfortunately, the leader of the men who murdered him was the sheriff of Lincoln County, and when Billy and his partners murdered the sheriff several months later, they became outlaws, regardless of how corrupt Brady may have been. So that was the story of Billy the Kid, who was convicted of murder on today's date in 1881. He was not able to ride far enough when he was escaping, and upon his return to Lincoln, he immediately formed a pass and set off to recapture the outlaw. On the 14th of July, Garrett surprised Billy in a darkened room not far from Lincoln and shot him dead. On the 9th of April in 1940, German warships entered major Norwegian parts from Narvik to Oslo, deploying thousands of German troops and occupying Norway. And at the same time, German forces occupied Copenhagen, among other Danish cities. They were able to slip through the mines Britain had laid around Norwegian ports because local garrisons were ordered to allow the Germans to land unopposed. And in Denmark, it was King Christian X who convinced his army could not fight off a German invasion, surrendered almost immediately. Hitler now added a second and third conquered nation to his quarry, which began with Poland. On the 9th of April in 1942, Major General Edward King Jr. surrenders at Bataan in the Philippines against General Douglas MacArthur's orders, and 78,000 troops that included Filipinos and Americans, the largest contingent of U.S. soldiers ever to surrender, are taken captive by the Japanese. The prisoners were at once led 55 miles on the southern end of that peninsula on what became known as the Bataan Death March. At least 600 Americans and 5,000 Filipinos died because of the extreme brutality of their captors, who starved, beat, and kicked them on the way. Those who became too weak to walk were bayoneted, and those who survived were taken by rail from the POW camps, where another 16,000 Filipinos and at least 1,000 Americans died from disease, mistreatment, and starvation. After the war, the International Military Tribunal, established by MacArthur, tried Lieutenant General Hama Masaharu, commander of the Japanese invasion forces in the Philippines, and he was held responsible for the Death March, a war crime, and was executed by firing squad on the 3rd of April in 1946. But it was on today's date in 1942, the largest contingent of U.S. soldiers ever to surrender, taken captive by the Japanese. On the 9th of April in 1947, the Congress of Racial Equality sent 16 black and white activists on a bus ride through the American South to test a recent Supreme Court decision striking down segregation on interstate bus travel. The so-called Journey of Reconciliation, which lasted 2 weeks, was an important precursor to the freedom rides of the 1960s. And on the last leg of the trip, before heading back to D.C., several riders were arrested after being attacked by an angry mob. And it was many of them then joined Martin Luther King Jr.'s closest advisors and helped organize the 1963 March on Washington for Jobs and Freedom. This happened on the 9th of April in 1947. And on the 9th of April in 1959, the NASA introduces America's first astronauts to the press. Scott Carpenter, Gordon Cooper Jr., John Glenn, Virgil Grissom, Walter Schirra, Alan Shepard, and Donald Slayton. The 7 men, all military test pilots, were carefully selected from a group of 32 candidates to take part in Project Mercury, America's first manned space program. NASA planned to begin manned orbital flights in 1961. NASA introduced America's first astronauts on today's date in 1959. On the 9th of April in 1962, Puerto Rican actress Rita Moreno becomes the first Hispanic woman to win an Oscar. Some of you may have seen that movie called West Side Story. She played the role of Anita. Born in Puerto Rico, grew up in Long Island, New York, began acting at a young age, landing her first Broadway role at the age of 13. And later in life, recalled her early career as a time when the only roles available to her were stereotypes. And it was humiliating, embarrassing stuff, she said. Nonetheless, she was successful, appearing in a supporting role in The King and I, which won 5 Academy Awards in 1956. And a few years later, she was cast in the role of her lifetime, Anita, in the film remake of the musical West Side Story. And here is the dance at the gym, that member from West Side Story. While many of the actors there, including leads Natalie Wood and Richard Baymer, did not perform their own singing parts, Rita Moreno recorded most of Anita's songs herself. West Side Story, ladies and gentlemen, was an enormous success, winning 10 Oscars, including Best Picture. And as she accepted her award for Best Supporting Actress, a bewildered Rita Moreno kept her acceptance speech concise. I can't believe it. Good Lord, I leave you with that. The first Hispanic woman to win an Oscar. At the height of the civil rights movement in 1963, these famous words were spoken from the steps of the Lincoln Memorial in Washington, D.C. I have a dream that one day this nation will rise up and live out the true meaning of its creed. We hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal. But Martin Luther King Jr. was not the first to raise his voice from those steps with a message of hope for America's future. That distinction belongs to the world-famous contralto Marian Anderson, whose performance at the Lincoln Memorial on the 9th of April in 1939 made a compelling case for transformative power of music, and in a place typically associated with the power of words. Marian Anderson was an international superstar. In the 1930s, a singer possessed of what was called a voice such as one hears once in 100 years. But if race had been no impediment to her career abroad, there were still places in the U.S. where a black woman was simply not welcome, no matter how famous. And what surprised her and many other Americans was to discover that one such place was a venue called the Constitution Hall, owned and operated by the Daughters of the American Revolution in the capital of a nation dedicated to the proposition that all men are created equal. And when the Daughters of the American Revolution refused to allow her to perform at the Constitution Hall because of her skin color, the organization lost one of its most influential members, First Lady Eleanor Roosevelt. And many other women quit the Daughters of the American Revolution in protest of its discriminatory action, which soon became a cause célèbre. And the invitation to perform on the steps of the Lincoln Memorial came directly from the Secretary of the Interior, who proclaimed in his introduction on that Easter Sunday that genius draws no color line. And there was nothing overtly political in the selection of songs that she performed that day before a gathered crowd of 75,000 people and a live radio audience of millions. But the message inherent in an African-American woman singing, "My country it is of thee," while standing before the shrine of America's great emancipator was crystal clear. Abraham Lincoln's famous words, "With malice towards none, with charity for all, let us strive on to finish the work we are in, to bind up the nation's wounds," carved in massive letters on the exterior wall of the Lincoln Memorial. And this was the theme that she advanced with the power of her incredible voice as she stood in front of those words on this day in 1939. It was a performance now recognized as an important prelude to the movement to come. The Chicago Eight, indicted on federal charges of conspiracy to incite a riot at the 1968 Democratic Convention in Chicago, plead not guilty. On today's date in 1969, the defendants include many out there who were charged with conspiracy to cross state lines with an intent to incite a riot. While the trial ended in February, Huffman, who was the main person out there, Abby Huffman, found the defendants and their attorneys guilty of 175 counts of contempt of court and sentenced them to terms ranging from 2 to 4 years. On the 9th of April in 2003, just 3 weeks into the invasion of Iraq, U.S. forces pulled down a bronze statue of Saddam Hussein in Baghdad's Firdaus Square, symbolizing the end of the Iraqi president's long, often brutal reign and a major early victory for the United States. Dramatic images of that toppled statue and celebrating citizens were instantly beamed around the world. With Saddam Hussein in hiding and much of the city now under U.S. control, the day's events later became known as the Fall of Baghdad. Saddam Hussein is now taking his rightful place alongside Hitler, Stalin, Lenin in the pantheon of failed brutal dictators. And the Iraqi people are well on their way to freedom, said the then Secretary of Defense Donald Rumsfeld in a Pentagon briefing. The Iraq war was far from over, however. Saddam Hussein was captured by U.S. forces in December of 2003 and executed in December of 2006, but the U.S. would not formally withdraw from Iraq until 2011, 8 years after the conflict first began. And it was that bronze statue of Saddam Hussein in Baghdad's Firdaus Square that was pulled down on today's date in 2003. And nearly 8 years after Princess Diana's death in a car crash was mourned the world over, Prince Charles, a widower and heir to the British throne, weds his longtime mistress Camilla Parker Bowles. The marriage, a private civil ceremony, took place at Windsor Guildhall, 30 miles outside of London. And the ceremony was not originally supposed to take place on the 8th of April, but had to be rescheduled so as not to conflict with the funeral of Pope John Paul II. And after the civil ceremony, which the Queen did not attend, Archbishop of Canterbury blessed the union on behalf of the Church of England in a separate blessing ceremony. An estimated 750 guests attended the ceremony, which was held at St. George's Chapel in Windsor and was attended by both of Charles' parents, Queen Elizabeth II and Prince Philip. And 20 years earlier, Prince Charles had married his first wife, Lady Diana Spencer, who at 20 years old was 12 years his junior. And their lavish wedding attracted a television audience of 750 million people, making it to the most popular program broadcast at that time. Her shy manner and beauty charmed audiences, sparking the international admiration that she enjoyed for the rest of her life. And so here it was the wedding of Prince Charles and Camilla Parker Bowles on today's date, the 9th of April in the year 2005. But her lack of popularity with the British public made news long before 1999, when she made her first public appearance as his companion. Though she technically became the Princess of Wales with the marriage, she has announced her preference for the title Duchess of Cornwall in deference to the beloved late princess. After the death of Queen Elizabeth and the ascension of Charles to king, she has become Queen Consort of the United Kingdom. After the service, which ended with the singing of God Save the Queen, Queen Elizabeth hosted a 2-hour reception in the state apartments at Windsor Castle, and the couple then left for a honeymoon at the Balmoral estate in Scotland. Princes William and Henry, who were both said to be happy about the marriage, decorated the Bentley in which the couple left the reception. Ladies and gentlemen, these were some stories from the annals of history that happened on today's date, which is the 9th of April. Today is going to be cloudy and mild. Numerous rain showers and storms redevelop and continue through the day. Some may become severe. And we do have one more wave of showers and storms tomorrow also. And then the weather should get better by Thursday into the weekend. The first wave of showers has moved off to the east for the moment, and some areas actually picked up 3 inches of rain overnight. We do have a Chandrat Mela that is happening today, and that it is the last day of Ramzan, and tomorrow Eid will be celebrated. The Chandrat Mela is at the Ruchi Palace by Kolachi. It is going to be there on Trinity Mills Road, and we encourage you all to go attend the Chandrat Mela out there. Shruti Sangeet Academy, the Indian classical vocal lessons are being provided by the Shruti Sangeet Academy by certified classical vocalist and talk show host Shanta Mishra. Explore the soul of Indian music that they offer, comprehensive curriculum with personalized instruction, immersion in bhajans, shlokas, and folk music. And this is the number you can call if you need more details for private and group lessons on the weekends in East Plano. 612-562-4432. We do have Color Me Safe. This is an organization to empower families regardless of background or economic means by providing guidance, solutions, and education related to child welfare. Color Me Safe Foundation, a family crisis management organization serving the greater Dallas area. And they have started 2 programs, 2 new educational initiatives. One is called Ask Auntie, and the other is Sati Support Group. Through discussion on topics such as generational and cultural gaps, cultural identity, mental health, bullying, and many others, these programs seek to empower South Asian children and families with the tools and understanding to overcome these shared challenges in a very supportive and non-judgmental space. ColorMeSafeFoundation.org would be the website that you would go to get more details about that. Also would like for all of you to know that the USI COC, the US India Chamber of Commerce, are inviting local graduate and undergraduate students who are going to compete in their Foundation Spirit of Innovation competition. That's going to be this Friday, the 12th of April. The Spirit of Innovation Technology competition, and this will be a business plan presentation. It's happening at the Brookhaven College, and it'll be on Friday from 9 to 1. You can check out more details on the Chamber's website, usicoc.org. That's on Friday. On Saturday, Vibha brings you the 18th annual Kite Flying Festival at the Sound at Cypress Waters on Olympus Boulevard in Coppell. And we encourage all of you to attend Vibha's annual event. Also on Sunday, Music That Feeds, a Hunger Mitao initiative, an evening of melody with a difference at UTD's Johnson Performance Hall on Sunday the 14th from 4 to 7. April is Celebrate Diversity Month, and the Chamber is pleased to partner with the Dallas Symphony Orchestra to promote Celebrate Diversity Night on the 19th of April from 6 to 7 at the Meyerson Symphony Center. And this pre-concert event features performances, light snacks and drinks, and then of course the regular concert performance by Troupe Vertigo, for which you will have to buy the tickets. All this at the Meyerson Symphony Center on the 19th. The Hyderabad Society of North Texas are having their Eid picnic on Saturday the 20th from noon to 6 at the Travick Pavilion in Grapevine. And for more information, you can call Mohammed Hamid at 469-544-4118. We do have the Pratham Gala coming up on the 20th. And we invite you to please join us because we do have limited individual tickets also available now. It's going to be at the Omni Frisco Hotel, an evening that ignites minds, touches hearts, and empowers futures. You'll be mesmerized by Vidya Vox's captivating voice and vibrant electronic soundscapes as she presents a special musical performance that blends tradition and innovation. Keynote speaker Krish Dhanam, captivating speaker mentored by the legendary Zig Ziglar, and he will be the keynote speaker, and guests are encouraged to incorporate a splash of Pratham yellow into their attire, hosting best dress contest during the reception as well as social media likes contests. So over the course of the evening, you'll indulge also in a decadent meal crafted by the finest chefs and let the conversation flow with like-minded individuals passionate about creating change. Your presence, ladies and gentlemen, at the Pratham Dallas Fort Worth Gala symbolizes a child supported with the opportunities needed to realize their dreams, secure job prospects, and embrace a brighter future illuminated by the power of learning. So please join us. I'll actually give you my direct number for those that would like more information on Pratham's Gala. And my number is 214-675-1754. Celebrity guest Pooja Batra is going to be in town on the 21st of April, and that will be in association with the Grand Center as MTV's Dream USA bring their event. Bismilki Mehfil happening on Sunday the 21st of April. This one is going to be at the Sambuca 360 at the Shops at Legacy. Healing the world through peace. Every individual can contribute to this World Meditation Hour on Sunday the 21st from 6:30 to 7:30 by the Brahma Kumaris. More details at bkrymeditation.us. EarthX 2024 Congress of Conferences happening from the 22nd to the 26th at the Hilton Anatole over those days. We do have Jeet Ka Safar with Amax. Champions 2009 T20 World Cup cricket team of Pakistan is going to be here in town on the 26th of April. And on the 26th and 27th, 2 days, but 3 shows of Umrao Jan Ada And that is a musical play in the Broadway style that is going to be presented at the Dallas Music Hall, and tickets are available at Ticketmaster. The Festival of Joy on the 27th of April at the Clyde Warren Park, and the Festival of India by the Dallas Indian Lions Club is happening for the 39th year on Sunday, the 28th of April. We do have the glamorous Shilpa Shetty coming into town on the 29th of June. Please mark your calendars for that. And an Indian Idol Intense Tour on the 10th of May. Unforgettable 90s with Kumar Sanu and Sadhana Sargam. That's live in concert on the 12th of May. And we do also have Junoon coming into town on the 19th of May. A holistic festival, a 2-day festival being brought to you by Vijay, and that is Mystic Mandala. I'm going to give you Vijay's number for those who'd like to know more details about this 2-day holistic festival on the 8th and 9th of June at the Plano Nature and Retreat Center. Vijay's number is 972-750-1419. The Badshah's Pagal Tour happening in Dallas at the Curtis Culwell Center on the 14th of June, and Shreya Ghoshal will be live on the 16th of June. That's your social calendar, what it looks like right here on this 9th day of April, the day after the solar eclipse. And we will have all the information that you need to take on the day every morning right here on Community Radio Networks. For those who'd like to reach me directly, my number is 214-675-1754.